Chapter 1. The Accident. Yuki sat on a driftwood log and gazed at the wide expanse of the Bering Sea. His long black hair tossed as he threw his head back and took a deep breath of the salty air. He never grew tired of watching the powerful winds of a storm whip the water into froth. Huge waves would for a moment hang suspended between beach and sky in perfect curl, and then with a thunderous crash break upon the beach. Nansen, Yuki's faithful husky, kept busy sneaking up on each huge wave. Bravely he approached it, then as the waves smashed on the beach, he turned and scurried back to his master. A Siberian Eskimo, Yuki lived in the small village of Gambell on the western edge of the Sevukok Island. The island, named St. Lawrence in English, belonged to the state of Alaska, yet it was only about 30 miles from Siberia in the Bering Sea, far from the coast of Alaska itself. Gambell consisted of a few low-slung houses strung along the long, narrow peninsula jutting into the sea. On the southern edge of the village, countless storms had left a large lake behind a high bar of sand. The village nestled against a steep mountain, guarding the way to the east and the rest of the island. Yuki sat deep in thought. This is not a good day. Why would my parents give me away to my grandparents? I am 10 years old and love my home. But now I'm being moved into my grandparents' house. His father had tried to explain this tradition to him. It is part of our heritage, my son, he said. On our island, parents often give away their firstborn son to the grandparents. Then they will have someone to look after them in their old age. Yuki spoke out loud to no one in particular. It doesn't make it any easier. Even though he loved his grandparents, it didn't make him feel any better. Who are you talking to? A voice behind him startled him from his thoughts. He looked back to see his little sister Plenty. Oh, nothing, he sighed. I was just thinking that tonight I move into grandfather's house. I'm having a hard time, I guess. Huh? She retorted with little sympathy. Now I'll have to work my head off doing all your jobs. I'll have to carry water and empty the honey bucket, waste bucket, and do all the dirty jobs. Besides, Pony said, trying to cheer her brother, tomorrow we can collect sea peaches and murex. I can hardly wait. Pony was right. Tomorrow would be a good day. Yuki looked at the sky. In this village on the edge of the Arctic Circle, the summer sun never set. It shone almost as brightly as midnight as at noon. Yuki stood. His stomach told him it was time to eat. Well, I might as well get used to it, he said to Pony, as they walked to the village. I'll have to spend the rest of my life in a new home. The two children returned to the village as Knudsen trailed along behind. At the center of the little cluster of houses, Yuki paused. He was tempted to return with his sister to his parents' home for just one more night, but he remembered what his father had said. Instead, he turned and walked a few steps to a small house standing alone at the edge of the village. He stooped and entered the low-covered porch, the entrance to the humble home of his grandparents. The home was small, made of driftwood from the beach and chinked with dirt. His grandfather greeted him warmly. Welcome to our home, Yuki. We are glad you will be living with us. Grandfather was a man of few words. and Yuki knew he was trying to make him feel comfortable. Grandmother gave him a warm smile and motioned for him to sit for a meal. The fresh seal meat looked delicious, and Yuki sat cross-legged on the floor to wait his turn. She handed him a small knife called a ulo. He chose a large piece of meat, put it in his mouth, and with the ulu, deftly sliced it off close to his lips. As he chewed contentedly, he mused, "Perhaps it won't be so bad after all." Yuki awakened the next morning to the sound of voices. When he looked up, he saw Puni in the kitchen, talking to grandmother. Dressing quickly, he grabbed some dried seal meat, and with Puni following close behind, headed for the beach. A bright sky and a calm sea made it a perfect day for food gathering. The two children scampered from place to place, picking up sea peaches and placing them in a small sack made of sealskin. Sea peaches aren't fruit as we think of peaches. They are little animals that attach themselves to rocks at the bottom of the ocean. When storms break them loose, they wash up on the beaches. Their tops are the color of peaches, and they look like large mushrooms. When Yuki and Puni finally stopped to rest, they each chewed on one of the tasty treats. With their sacks full of sea peaches, the two turned their attention to collecting eggs. A murre is a large fish-eating duck that lives in the Arctic during the summer. These ducks nest on the cliffs and ledges by the millions. Their eggs are large, speckled green and blue in color, and are delicious, though very fishy tasting. Yuki loved to clamber up and down the steep cliffs collecting the eggs. He instructed his sister Puni, "This is dangerous, and I don't want you to get hurt. You wait by the basket, and I will bring the eggs to you." Puni's lower lip trembled. "I'm old enough to climb cliffs. I'm not a baby," she pouted. "You mind what I say. Stay here by the basket," he commanded. He carefully crawled out onto the little ledges, removed the eggs from the nests, and filled each small sack before returning to Puni, who faithfully guarded the eggs. The sky was black with hundreds of distraught mer parents flying back and forth, often diving close to Yuki's head. Far below, the waves splashed on the beach. "One more trip and I'm done," Yuki yelled to Puni as he inched his way on the small ledge. Suddenly, a small rock hit him on the shoulder. Glancing up, he saw his sister's small legs appear at the top of the cliff. "Puni," he shouted, "what are you doing? Get back!" "I'm coming down to where you are," she yelled over her shoulder, lowering her small body down to a ledge. She edged along to another spot where she could climb down. "No, Puni, no!" Yuki repeated. "You're going to get hurt." At that very moment, her foot slipped. He watched, horrified, as his little sister vainly grabbed handsful of rocks and dirt. Then her body fell past him, bouncing, scraping, and finally coming to rest on a small ledge below. "Puni! Puni!" he screamed. As he scrambled down the cliffs, he watched for any sign of life from his little sister. She lay motionless. Was she dead?